Let me ask you a question. We'll start this kind of dark. What's your thoughts on AI?
That's where we're starting. Wow. I can't believe you just dropped that bomb. You're like, super easy, gonna be nice, super simple, basic framework. Okay, let's do this. Tell me about your thoughts about Mark Zuckerberg and how he's watching you always. Well, there are my thoughts. Do you actually want to know? Or I don't have extensive thoughts because I don't know enough, but
no, not. I mean, if you want to go into detail, we can. I was just joking-ish because of the recording. Like, oh, now it's recording. I'm like,
really curious.
Yeah.
I think pertaining to the topic of this podcast, I think it's deeply terrifying, but also, I don't know. I have the morbid curiosity about it of like it's a train wreck. Like, I don't want to look, but I can't look away, kind of a thing. And also, it's so relevant to all technology now, all upcoming technology, that I feel like we should learn as much as possible about it. And of course, my brain as a dance artist is like, how does this pertain to dance? How can we innovate the field of digital dance and dance in the digital age, and as artists in the digital age, and use it to our advantage to make cool art? So that's where I stand on that. And other than the deep existential dread I feel in my heart, it's interesting.
So have you seen Ex Machina?
Yeah, I definitely have. And I definitely am not a fan because of that deep existential dread.
Yeah. So I'm like, what would you do if an AI robot was mimicking your exact movements? And it pretty much predicted
awesome choreography out of it.
Well, it predicted your movements before you even thought of that movement,
Oh, I would totally use them to make more choreography. Yeah. Oh my God. That's like having a second choreographer on hand. Very expensive one. They probably charge more than most dance artists because we're underpaid. But yeah, that's what I would do.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's probably a better use that I could use it for, ending world hunger, but but that is where my mind went first.
Nah, that's an afterthought. You could do that after you have your little dance competition. All funds go towards ending world hunger. How's that?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah. That's how we're gonna start this off. Let's have you introduce yourself real quick then, so we could put a face to the voice and stuff and all that fun jazz.
Great. Well, this is my face and this is my voice, and my name is Jessica Baynes, and I am a dance artist based in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm originally from San Diego, and for the first 15 years of my life, I trained in flamenco dance and in Irish dance, and then in my teens, I took flamenco much more seriously. I performed in the Southern California area and toured with a Latin band called Flamenco for a year or two, and studied at the San Diego School of Creative and Performing Arts. And that's where I was introduced to ballet and modern dance. And I absolutely fell in love with modern dance. And so I went to the University of Utah, which is where I met Alexis, which is Chaz and my mutual friend. And I got my degree in modern dance. And then from there, I taught at the University of Utah Department of Ballet for a year. And then I accepted a faculty position at Ballet West. And that's where I am now full time. And I teach in the professional training division, training teenagers mostly, between ages 15 to 20 in flamenco, classical Pilates, and contemporary dance and movement. But then a couple times a week, I also teach very young children and older adults. And I'm also very interested in dance research and dance science and dance for health. And I founded an organization called Healing and Motion Dance, which teaches ballet, that is ballet pedagogy that is tailored for participants with neurological diseases. So anyway, that was really long.
That's quite the resume.
I try to stay busy, but
so you said flamenco?
Flamenco, yeah, that is the dance.
What is that exactly?
So the little dance emoji on your phone of the girl in the red dress, that is a flamenco dancer. That is, or at least I've always assumed it was. It's if you've ever seen River Dance or like is it Strictly Ballroom? They're famous media like shows and movies that feature flamenco dancers. Flamenco is an ancient style of dance. It's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And it started with the Andalusian people in the south of Spain, and draws from influences of Indian dance and from the Moorish people and the Middle East. And it's really known for its really complex rhythms, clapping, and footwork, and like really specific arm movements and hand gestures.
So it's nothing like Footloose.
No. I mean, I'm sure we could draw parallels, but it's a bit of a stretch.
That's cool. Yeah, I took dancing once. In elementary.
Did you like it?
I didn't not like it. It's not, I mean, here's the thing. I'm clumsy and I'm kind of a klutz. And back then I was really skinny and lanky and just tall. Like I was like, I don't know, creepy, lanky kid. You know what I mean? Like,
No. For what it's worth, most professional dancers are pretty freaking clumsy in their real lives.
It's actually Ballet West who came and taught us though.
Oh, I know exactly. I teach for that program.
Yes.
for the adjacent programs. Yeah. Was it the I Can Do program?
I don't remember. That was like,
oh, that was like 20 years ago. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like, who was your teacher and like how long of a class and what was their lesson plan? That's where my brain goes. Yeah. That's cool. And did it align with your science and math curriculum? Yeah. I'm genuinely curious, but I recognize that was probably 10 years or 20 years ago.
Yeah, I don't remember. It was just, we had cool shirts though. They're like blue and they had like a circle of like people holding hands,
I love that.
Yeah. And then it was cool because like, when we watched that when we were like in 4th, 5th grade, and it was the 6th graders who got to do this, right? Mm-hmm. So during the assembly, it was always cool to see everybody like do like the diagonal runs and do like a cool jump move.
Yeah.
Like, in the air. I'm like, I want to be like that. And then when the time came, I think all I did was like just did like a weird skateboard spin move.
I love that.
Thing. Yeah, it was weird. It was weird. But
and you can remember that and the way that felt and like what move you did. And it was over 20 years ago. Like, dance is awesome.
Yeah, actually. Yeah. I haven't thought about it till now, but yeah. I'm like, is that one of my traumas? No.
Well, we hope that, I mean, at least I can't speak for all dance teachers ever, but the hope is that it's not a scary social situation that you remember so intensely because everyone was watching you do that spin leap like Tony Hawk, because that was the era back then. I remember.
Yeah.
And yeah. But hopefully it was an empowering experience and that's why you remember it.
No, I actually, just looking back on me, it makes me laugh. Like I thought it was fun. But dancing at weddings, for example, like on the dance floor, it's a whole different story.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
I don't have.
But
moves.
How is it for you?
I don't have moves. I look like a dude just dancing.
Just jamming. Don't think too hard. Honestly, what I always say for weddings is a solid toe touch. You can do any variation. You go step together, or you can go step out, step in, step out, step in. Then you can do the same thing forward and back. You can add some arms. You can keep them close, little boxer. Like if you just do a toe touch, you always look like you know what you're doing.
So okay, is flamenco? Am I saying it right? Flamenco.
Flamenco, yeah. Thanks for not calling it flamingo. That happens a lot.
Yeah. So is flamenco and you said Irish dancing too? So are you talking about like line dancing in a sense, or?
I think like line dancing, if you're referring to country dancing, like in American dance styles, actually that type of line formation probably comes from Irish dance because Irish dance has been around a lot longer. But like for Irish dancing, kind of the closest associated forms I can think of to bring up would be like clogging. For hard shoe, soft shoe, they wear leather shoes. It's very balletic almost, and the formations are quite linear, and that comes from Nordic influences when they invaded in like the 12th century.
So it was
it's
used
like
for
army. It comes from military formations. So
that's actually really cool.
If line dancing, or at least that's what different books have told me. I mean, I don't know how true that is, but if line dancing in the States has come from Irish influences, which I wouldn't be surprised if they do, then that's actually comes from like 1,000 years ago, like military, like Nordic military routines, I guess you could say.
Like with Vikings and stuff, or
yeah, yeah. The Irish come from the Celts, who were originally Vikings and tribal warriors who like were heavily matriarchal, like very strong people. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Well, I only asked because I did a Viking binge watch from the TV show, which isn't like,
My cousin's in that show. My Irish cousin.
What?
Yeah. He's one of the king's like henchmen. He basically like hangs this guy over a fire and like makes him strip naked. And like my cousin does nothing but laugh a lot. And so watching him like torture someone on television was horrifying and amazing in a dark way because I knew it wasn't real.
Right.
But yeah. Conrad.
That's cool. It's a good show. I mean, I binged all of it, but it's just cool to look at Viking history and realize there's still influences within even like dance, with the Nordic stuff. But cool. Totally. The more you know. How did you get your start in dancing then? Like what kind of drew your eye or your attention to go in that direction?
Yeah, so I've obviously had a lot of Irish influences as part of my upbringing, and that comes from my dad, who immigrated to the States from Ireland when he was like in his 20s, so about my age now. He came to the US as a musician, as a rock and roll guitar player and blues artist. But then when he decided to stay in the States, he actually made most of his living doing Celtic Irish music. And so when I was born, I was just always around that since it was part of his career. And he was friends with the people who were involved in the music on the show Riverdance. I don't know if you're familiar with the Broadway show. It's actually coming to Salt Lake in February or March. So that's your opportunity. Shameless plug for a show I'm not even in. But it's a phenomenal show. And I just like shredded through the VHS of it at 2 years old. So like when my parents were like working at home, my living room babysitter was Riverdance and Teletubbies, but mostly Riverdance. And like I do actually remember the like innate desire to want to dance with the people on screen. And there's a flamenco number in that as well. And so I was very intrigued by both the Irish and the flamenco. And my parents say, like, I would just always be wiggling in my diapers. And whenever my dad would be performing and my mom would take me to his gigs, if they were in the daytime, like I would just go on stage and like shake my diaper. And like sometimes people would throw change. And so there's not necessarily one pivotal moment that I was like, dance is for me. There's been a lot of those moments, but like, where did it first begin? It's kind of always been a part of my life. When I was 3, I remember my mom taking me to a Latin festival. I grew up in San Diego, right by the border of Mexico. And so there's lots of Chicano pride festivals of just like representing Mexican culture and Chicano culture. And one of them had a flamenco artist on stage. And I remember telling my mom, like, I need to do whatever that is. And like, it's weird that memory, I was 3 years old and it's so distinct, but I do remember being really enchanted by the colors and the movement. And so by 3, I started flamenco and Irish dance. And yeah, that was also a really long story, but that was how I started.
Well, I didn't know that your dad is from Ireland.
That's why I really enjoyed your episode with that Irish artist, because he had mentioned
Brian Higgins. Yeah.
Yeah, he had mentioned Irish stories being really dark, like scaring your child to sleep. And I was like, yeah, that hits hard. Like there's so many, like they're all tragic and they're all sad and people die. And then they're like, the end. And it's, and I remember that being juxtaposed with all of the Disney movies I was watching. I was like, why is this so screwed up? And I think I asked one of my godmothers who is Irish, and she was like, no, there's like beauty in that. Like like life is suffering and you find the beauty within that. And I was like, oh, whatever. And then now I'm an adult and I'm like, oh, that's so poignant. But yeah, as a kid, I was like, oh, it's just really screwed up. Like, so
that's so cool.
So I really like that episode.
What was your favorite folklore then? Like, while we're on that topic, you have one?
Yes, and the name is totally escaping me, but it's the name of the horse that it's about, and so I should know that. Maybe Brian mentioned it in the episode in his podcast, but oh my gosh, Tír na nÓg. It's the tale of Tír na nÓg. It's about this woman this man who rides this horse that can like travel over sea and time, and he can visit his loved ones. But if he falls off if he gets off the horse, sorry, can you tell it's been like 20 years since anyone has read me this bedtime story? When he gets off the horse, or the rule of this curse is he cannot get off the horse. Otherwise he will turn into an old man. But if he stays on the horse, he lives forever. And okay, sorry, I'm totally butchering the story. But this woman comes, this like magical woman, and she's like, let me take you to the land of Tír na nÓg. And he's like full of hormones. So he's like, yes, please. And then he goes, and they're in this magical land where time has no meaning. And then he comes back on this horse, and then he falls off and turns into an old man and can never return because he accidentally fell off the horse. And everyone he knows and loves has died already. I'm totally butchering the story, but it ends very tragically. But I just really like the horse, and the lady in the pictures, the princess, was always gorgeous. And so that was my favorite. Yeah. And so choices and sacrifice and aging, I think, was the moral of the story. But
yeah, a lot of that can't be found until you're older to understand, if a 3-year-old got all that, like all that thematically, I mean, that'd be cool. But also, what a lot to take in at 3.
Yeah. There are a lot of other really messed up stories that are beautiful. And I think, and I agree with Brian, like should be made again as plays and movies, because like the same biblical stories and Shakespeare stories keep getting retold over and over. And like Irish folklore is totally where it's at.
Yeah. Macbeth. I didn't like the new one. I know. That's blasphemy. That's cool. San Diego. When did you decide to come to Utah of all places?
When the University of Utah gave me a scholarship to come.
So you applied to the U then, or?
Yes. So I did a whole like college audition tour. I was looking to train either in LA, the East Coast, in Europe, or in Salt Lake City. And I was very fortunate in that I got a lot of different opportunities and offers to go to any one of those places. And I remember when someone had brought up the U, I was like, Utah, like, what do they have there as far as dance? Like, I don't even know where Utah is on a map, which like just goes to show how ignorant I was, and like, or maybe what a snob I was at the time as a 16-year-old. And I came to, I mean, I'd already done a lot of college auditions and observed a lot of college classes. And when I came to the University of Utah, I really noticed that there was this overwhelming sense of community and like specific attention to development of the person and the artist, and classes like marketing and portfolio that like help build a student and equip them for a life outside of performance as a dance artist. And so much of what I do now is just like being an artist outside of performing. And so, yeah, that's mainly why I made the decision. The scholarship helped, but the department having that kind of culture where they identified the person as a human being rather than a body in motion was kind of the selling point for me.
Yeah, I think the U has a really cool, like just overall arts program, with all the dancing, photography, film, whatever else they offer.
Claymation.
Playmate, yeah. So yeah, I think it's cool that you chose Utah of all places.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna get the heck out of here as soon as I graduated, and then I didn't. And this is like I'm going on my 7th year now here.
7 years, huh?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I like it.
It's kind of grown on you, right?
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah. I haven't lived outside of Utah, so it's always fascinating why people come here, because it's being from Utah. I'm like, it's Utah.
Well, you have the usual reasons like snow grows. Oh, the usual dancers. Yeah, sometimes. And like of course the church and but yeah, dance, surprisingly enough, this is a real hot spot for the arts.
That's cool. And while you were at the U, did you what was your emphasis on? Was it still flamenco? And you said modern dancing? Is that what you said too?
Modern dance was my degree. So I like kind of put flamenco on the back burner. Like I didn't study flamenco for those 4 years. I don't think at all. And because I have been seeking a career in contemporary dance.
Right.
And so I took, like in order to train to be a contemporary dancer, you have to take a variety of different styles to be equipped for that kind of rep. And so I took ballet every other day. I took modern every other day. And then composition and just like different classes like that. But we also took jazz and West African. We did have one flamenco teacher come in once, but I wouldn't call it like studying flamenco because that's something I did for so long that like one workshop class isn't like studying it. It was a nice introduction though, or reintroduction to touch back in with it. But I really have gotten more in touch with flamenco since graduating college and it being something in demand during summer intensive season, and people want to offer those kinds of unique workshops. And I'm like, oh, I got to study up again and take some continuing ed and,
What's the difference between modern dance compared to like the other styles then?
Yeah, so this definition will vary depending upon who you talk to, and I know that that's not a helpful answer.
Because like from an outsider, right? I always viewed modern dance more as experimental. Like I don't know if that's doing it discredit.
No, I think that that's totally an accurate assessment. And yeah, for sure. Like in ballet, the common misconception with that is that modern is not a classical style like ballet because ballet is codified. Classical modern dance does exist and it is very codified. There are several different kinds of classical modern dance styles, the most famous of which are Limon technique, which comes from Jose Limon, who I believe is a Mexican choreographer. Okay. The Limon Dance Company in New York City. Same thing applies to Martha Graham technique, Lester Horton technique, and Paul Taylor technique. So, and those are all modern dance pioneers who founded those different styles, and they all have their own unique approaches to the body and to the space. Another technique is Nikolai technique from Alwyn Nikolai, and Ryrie Woodbury Dance Company that's based in Salt Lake City, Utah, happens to be like the company that specializes and offers Nikolai rep in their performance programs. So, all of this to say, modern dance originally started in the late 1800s, early 1900s as a way to rebel from ballet. And then it was like, let's take off our shoes and frolic in the fields. And then it became a more codified technique, ironically, as like a rebelling type of dance, which is mainly focused on contractions of the stomach and torso, spirals of, the head to the tail and the hand to the foot. And it's very interested in three-dimensionality, a lot more than something like ballet, I would say, and is traditionally done in bare feet. Now, that has since changed please let me know if I'm boring you, by the way, with
no, this is fascinating.
It's because it's not like a simple one-line Wikipedia answer, though I have gone on there to see if anyone has done it, has been able to condense it. And if anyone watching this has the link, let me know. Now, since the 50s, that definition has changed because there's been the rise of postmodernism. You get choreographers like Twyla Tharp, Trisha Brown, Yvonne Rainier, who have like changed the game. And they're like, what if we just dance we move for movement's sake and it doesn't mean anything? And then, half of the dance community is like, oh, wow, we're going to write these manifestos of all the things we're not going to do. We're not going to do ballet. We're not going to wear shoes. We're not going to make it mean anything. And then it suddenly started meaning something. And then you get the rise of so then postmodernism through the 60s and the 80s, sort of dies down a little bit, still very much exists in, a lot of places, is taught somewhat at the U, exists in a space called Judson in New York City, which is a church that is now used for dance, which I think is cool because dance is a religion in its own way. And there's some beautiful metaphor there. As we're talking about dance on a Sunday, which is one of my favorite ways to spend a Sunday. Now the ballet influences have come back and we see the rise of what's called contemporary dance. And so contemporary dance is an even broader thing because everyone's like, I'm just going to move and it's contemporary, which there is some validity to that. But then some people are like, oh, but it's more balletic. And so there's conflicting opinions. And then if you talk to someone who's in Europe versus someone who's in America, they're like, modern dance is okay, let's say you talk to a European choreographer. They're like, modern dance is classical from the 50s, like Lamone, Taylor, Horton, all those names I listed. But contemporary is, this more balletic style that uses opposition and counterbalancing and has all of these different components that have built from those on top of those styles. And whereas in the States, we're we call all that modern. And so even though my degree is in modern dance, my training was contemporary in nature. And that is why this podcast is going to be 3 hours long, is because all of my answers are extremely convoluted. And I like to give the historical context because it's always important.
When's an artist not convoluted to some degree,
And verbose and annoyingly long in their thought process? I agree. Yeah.
Well, the thought process, I think for any creative, really, you could say one word and also it could trigger this whole train thought of somehow ending back in Ireland, what would you do if I wrap that whole history lesson back to Ireland?
Yes.
I'm not going to do that, but
we're not going to.
No.
I'm already no, we won't. But we could, but we won't.
No, we won't. That's cool though, because I think with dancing, I personally, I don't understand a lot of that goes into it, right? And whenever I see them stand on their tiptoes, I don't know if that just ballet or is that used in across the spectrum,
Yeah, it's used across the spectrum. Ballet is the only one I personally know of that goes the extra mile and is it's not anatomically possible. This. Yeah. And so let's build a shoe to make us do it.
So does the shoe helps with that then?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I mean, like in just the styles that I've studied, like ballet, modern / contemporary, and Irish dance, sometimes flamenco, rarely, but sometimes will go onto the ball of the foot. Ballet is the only one I know of. Not to say there aren't some in existence in some remote country that I've never heard of that go onto the actual tip of the toe in the point shoe. They go onto what's called their box, and there's like a little flat part underneath the shoe. And so they're able to balance on the actual tip of their toe. The other ones that go on tiptoes are really just on the ball of their foot. I'm wearing fuzzy socks because this is a Zoom call and I didn't think you were going to see my feet today. But this is the difference here versus here.
The more you know.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Yes, but of course I make it harder than it needs to be.
No, it does, because like whenever I see the, that you shouldn't be doing that with your body, contortionism kind of stuff. It just like, I just picture of like a horror movie of like the bone, and
No.
blood spurting out everywhere if you do it wrong. I don't know.
Like good point shoes are built so that it's sustainable. It's not like they're going to roll. I mean, it does happen like from time to time, but those are like freak accidents. But ideally they should be able to sustain there. And there's the foot technology to keep them upright, and the ankle strength. As a conditioning teacher for ballet dancers, we do work on inner thigh strength, ankle strength, core strength, so that their coordination is centered, or like their center of weight is centered enough, pulled in enough, and aligned enough that their point of balance can be that small.
That's so cool. The human body's cool, what it can do,
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, there's no way I could do that, but that's cool. Like, I think that's really cool.
Never say never.
No, I'm saying never.
Oh, no.
Not gonna attempt that. I would rather, like, just the other 2 months ago. Here's the thing. I'm 27, right?
Okay.
I threw out my sciatic nerve, and I'm only 27. I know.
I'm sorry.
And so I'm like, I guess this is getting old.
I'm so sorry. I mean, did you see anyone for it?
Oh, definitely not. No. Here's how it.
27, right? I get it.
Well,
I'm similar.
Well, I mean, here's how it happened. I don't think I think the only people who know the story is my family, because they were helping me, because it was a heavy ass toolbox, like one of those ones that you find in a garage, right? Because I had to go pick that up with my friend and my sister for my dad to surprise him on behalf of my mom, right? It was like a whole coordinated thing. So we put it together or whatever, and it's just me and my sister, and I'm trying to lift it like a dumbass. And this is like almost like 800 pounds of like trying to lift.
That's a lot of freaking tools.
Yeah. And so when that happened, like I threw that out. So I was walking crooked for a good 3-4 days.
Oh my gosh.
But now it's fine. But then there's always, like, if I do lift heavy stuff or try to balance or whatever, like there's always that little pressure point in that same spot, and I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like, I know you already know this, but if you're insured, I highly encourage you go see a professional, because you need your back for everything.
I know.
I mean, you know that now. You turn to like fix the mic, and it's like, it requires your back. And so, yeah, definitely like get that taken care of, because you deserve it.
Yeah. But I'm like, I can make jokes though, being like, oh, my back hurts, I'm carrying the weight of my family. I don't know,
I mean, you could say that anyway and not feel the crushing, excruciating pain every day, and then laugh about it and like move on and not like live with that pain. But I hear
there's no pain anymore, but like,
yeah,
why
get it out when you can just keep guilting your family?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing too. Basketball was my sport back in the day. Because I was 6'4", lanky center dude, right? And how fit I was. Like, I think back, like, I mean, 10 years ago, I was like really fit, right? And now I'm like, there's no way. Like,
I mean,
That's
there's
so
a way.
there's a way, but I'm like, that's so crazy, like how fit I actually was. And you don't realize it until like, years later.
Mm-hmm.
Damn. But the human body, what it can do is cool. I mean, that's where that whole tangent came from. So
Yeah. Well, I hope you got your back. Is it feeling better then?
oh yeah, it's felt better. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I
I
thought you
just,
were like currently in pain.
oh no. But I mean, like I've never had to crawl on the floor to get out of bed, which was probably a red flag, that I should have gone to a chiropractor or something. I was like, no, I will live through it. And I lived through it. But definitely if that happens again, definitely I'll get that checked out.
Yeah, for sure.
Insurance should cover it. Should is the key word.
A whole
Healthcare in the US. That's
I
another
don't know
thing.
where if the direction you want to take it. I mean, I'm down, but yeah.
Millennials, healthcare, it's all good.
Everything's fine.
what was your favorite music then that you liked to dance to back then that you kind of like influenced to like where you are now?
That's a great question because I feel like it changes as I change and from day to day. Like, like anyone who listens to music, sometimes I have my sad boy music and sometimes
Sad boy
like
music.
the kind I'm talking about.
Like My Chemical Romance emo music, or
oh god, no, not that sad boy.
Or T Swift breaking up.
I shouldn't shame that. I mean, no. Not, oh my gosh, no. Though those are valid. I'm more of a sad coffee shop acoustic vibe.
Nice.
Like all up in my feels, crying my tears into a cup of coffee type, but like, so like cool, but in a hipster way, like, or sad, but in a hipster way. I don't know. I'm not that, but when I'm sad, maybe I fancy myself as a Salt Lake hipster crying into their espresso as they listen to Ben Rector. Like, so
I actually like Ben Rector.
He's really musically talented. It's not the same four chords over and over. He's very interesting.
Yeah.
So sad but interesting is my aesthetic. But hopefully. But but it changes. Like I like fast Latin music. I like reggaeton. I like reggae sometimes. I like R&B. I like T Swift from time to time. I know she gets a lot of shade, but sometimes she has some female empowerment stuff where I'm like, yeah, you might not have written these lyrics yourself, but your ghostwriter is totally here, and I'm here for this. I don't know. But as far as a dance context, Irish dance has totally influenced my understanding of dance and music and the relationship between the two because of my dad. Irish music plays a big role. Definitely flamenco music. I was always like a very musical mover. And the way that I memorize phrasing is instead of like, I can't do counts to save my life. Some people are like, where does the pinky move on the 6? I can't, I wish I could be that detail oriented and numeric in nature. However, oh yeah. Especially now that I work with a lot of ballet artists, like young ballet artists, they will regularly ask me like, where is the shoulder blade on the 7? And I'm like, okay, I have to like really reflect and think about the way I was trained and raised is like taki taki tatum, and like you just do it and you sing that little ditty and you go and so I think about the like intonation of that cadence and I'm like, oh, on the dee, but I have to think, okay, what is that? 1 2 3. I'm like, okay, so it's on 1. And now like that I've studied a little bit more music theory through college, I actually live with professional musicians now. Apologies if you can hear them in the background practicing, but also like not apologies because it's beautiful and they're good at what they do. Yeah. Like I'm like, okay, so this is a 1 and a, or 1 E and a, so I have to be like, it's on a 1 E and a. And so that level of detail gets very interesting. All of this to say, flamenco music has heavily inspired my style of movement. Flamenco generally operates in a 12 because I find it's very useful because you can work in 6s, 3s, and 4s since it splits into those multiples. And so that has heavily informed the way that I move. And in contemporary dance, you get a lot of like moody classical music. So like spicy classical music, like Max Richter, Philip Glass. So that's heavily influenced. Not heavily influenced, but I just find that I'm around it a lot. Yeah.
I like Max Richter.
Yeah, he makes really good work.
And Philip Glass, yeah.
Which like maybe that's a controversial thing for me to say, but I think they're objective.
Why would that be controversial?
Just some of my musician friends, I've been like, Max Richter, am I right? And they're like, And I'm like, oh, I'm an uncultured human being. I thought that was good. I personally enjoy it a lot. So, you know, it's okay to be wrong.
And not everybody has good music taste, you know, like you do. So like,
thanks.
Who's really wrong here, you know?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Didn't say it was me to be wrong.
So what do you think is like genre wise? What's the hardest music to try to dance to? Sometimes
my favorite, flamenco.
Is that really the hardest one to like try to figure movements out with, or?
It's the hardest to teach. And I find that because I work with dancers who work in classical music in ballet music, where it's always square and in 4/4 signature or 3/4 signature. Okay. And like the most spicy it gets is in a mazurka, which is a 6. And in flamenco, like if I'm teaching a rhythm, like a very common palo or a rhythm in flamenco is called bulerías, which is a 12. And you have to start at the end of the phrase. So an example would be 12, 1, 2, or 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And trying to teach the emphasis on 7, 8, and 9, 10, 11, 12, and starting with a 12 and going all the way past an 8 count is really hard for a lot of dancers' brains. And in addition to that, they're working their arms, their legs, and their torsos at the same time. And so the coordination of that gets very difficult to teach because I have to really study it ahead of time or just really know what I'm doing and not just feel it, which is what a lot of flamenco is it's a lot of social dynamic and you feel out the relationship with the musician. So I have to kind of like make it more textbook like,
right.
As a teacher. But for that challenge, that is also why it is my favorite. Now, outside of flamenco, the hardest to dance to for me, I don't know. Sometimes like pop music gets on my nerves. Like, because I start working in more complex rhythms and then we come back to like something like T Swift and I'm like, I can't do the same 3 chords over and over. And like, it's just an 8 count. And like, maybe that sounds a little snobby of me. I'm like, where's my classical rep in a 5? But I don't know. I would need to think about that question a little harder.
I'm surprised you didn't say like death metal or something like that.
No, that's kind of interesting because it just isn't done that much. Sometimes when I'm teaching composition to kids and I'm introducing like how music relates to dance, I'll tell you like make a choreography, here are the parameters, and then I'm just going to put on music that you won't know until you're moving. And I want you to reflect that quality of movement. And so first I'll put on like a really happy-go-lucky song or like something like Max Richter, and then I'll put on death metal for the next run. And it catches them off guard every time. But the moral of the story is your sound heavily influences your performance and how the audience views your movement.
That's cool. Yeah, I was not expecting that answer. So
yeah, I mean, I wish I could take credit, but that's based on a lesson plan from Michael Wall, who's based at the U, he's a composer in Salt Lake.
The more you know.
Yeah.
While you were at the U, I saw you did a TED Talks series video. Was that while you were going to school or was that after graduation?
That was right after graduation. I applied while I was a senior.
Okay.
And I was to make it back to about Ireland. When I graduated, I gave up my apartment and I had a place secured in Ireland, and I was going to move there and start auditioning in Europe because as far as government funding goes, Europe is a bit more supportive of the arts. Yeah. We won't go there today. But and as someone who qualifies for an EU passport, it just seemed like an obvious decision. And so that was my next move. But then while I was abroad doing a different dance project, I received the notification that I got picked out of like a bunch of people to do a talk. And I was like, oh, words I'm not going to say on this podcast. Wow. I should probably stay in Utah. And so I lived on an air mattress at my friend's house for a couple months. And then I got the faculty position at the U, and I was like, I should probably stay for a couple more months. And then my contract got extended to teach for a full school year. And I was like, I should probably stay for a year and like find some place that's not an air mattress. And then I moved in with one of my best friends who had an 8-month-old baby at the time, who is now like a niece to me. And we, the three of us and another person all live together in a bedroom. Sorry, landlord, if you're listening. And and so that's part of how I stayed in Utah, to come back to your question of why am I still here. And then the pandemic hit when I was going to go move again, and now I'm still here.
Dude, it's like life doesn't want you to get out of Utah, huh?
I know. I freaking know. But also it's beautiful, so I'm not mad about it.
So how did you prep for the TED Talk video? Because you're talking about some of the research that you've done personally while you were going to school?
Yeah. So yes, the short answer is yes, but it's never a short answer with me. If you've learned anything in the last hour about my methods of communication. Yes, I founded this organization called Healing in Motion Dance while I was an undergrad, based on a head injury that I'd had and my interest in the overlap between ballet pedagogy and neurology and rehab. And so I taught this class at one of the local clinics at the University of Utah that through University of Utah Health. And essentially it pairs physical therapy students with dance students that work together to teach these rehab ballet classes that benefit participants with neurological disorders like Parkinson's disease, stroke, multiple sclerosis, and traumatic brain injury. And so they would go and take a bar class, a ballet class, but the exercises done are specifically picked as ways to help them manage their physical and mental and emotional symptoms, I would say. And so the talk was about that. So one could say that I spent 4 years preparing for the talk that way, but basically my whole spiel on the red dot was about how ballet could be used as a means of community and rehabilitation and therapy, even though for the last 100 to 200 years, it has been viewed as something which is unhelpful to the body. Like, oh my goodness, like getting on your toes is so unhealthy. And like, oh my goodness, like, there's the stigmas, or people say like, could I even take ballet? Like, I'm overweight. Like, yes, you can benefit from ballet. Like, you don't have to be a girl. You don't have to be young. Like, my oldest student in Healing in Motion is 101 years old when she started. Yes, you can take ballet when you're older. Yes, you can take it when you're injured. Yes, you can take it like if you have a disability. Yes, you can do it despite whatever your gender is, your body composition. If one half of your body works, like yes, and yes, like it doesn't need to be an exclusive art form. And the people who make it exclusive were probably excluded at some point. And so like, let's make it different. And I'm not the only person making it an inclusive art form. Like, I stand on the shoulders of giants, and this has been innovating in the ballet world for quite some time now. It's slow, but it's happening. And so my goal with that was to kind of expose ballet as a more inclusive movement form.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Because like I told you before we started recording, I watched it and it's like, that's a really cool story, especially the guy who traveled to the Middle East, right? And
yeah,
it was really inspiring, you know. But a lot of it reminded me as well, because one of my sisters studies dance to a degree of that sort, and I called her to get an explanation of what she does, but I might have been a little bit intoxicated. So I don't want don't remember exactly, but I think hers is more of like emotional stuff, you know, like I don't know, but it was along the same lines ish, I think. So I thought it was really cool. I'm like, oh my God, like connections, you know. But I think it's really cool that you did a TED Talks video. How did you prepare for that? Were you nervous? What was your very first thought right before they're like introducing you on stage?
Oh man. So I'll try and answer each of these questions.
One more quick. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm ready. Hit me. It might take a long time for me to answer, but I'll get to them. It took me 5 months to prepare. Yeah. I was very fortunate in the sense that TEDx Salt Lake City, there are a lot of different TEDx events that happen around the world. Obviously, you have Big TED, TED, technology, entertainment, and design. And that's like the big one in New York, that's based in New York City. And then outside of that, you have TEDx, which are independently organized events and per city. And so TEDx Salt Lake City is kind of one of those bigger TEDx programs and organizations. And so they actually have a team of speaker coaches and writing coaches. And so I got the chance to work with a wonderful board of organizers and professional speaking coaches who talked me through it. And one of them was a former TED fellow from Big TED. They call it like Big TED because if you say TED, it's confusing. But so anyway, it took 5 months, probably like 11 drafts of the speech that ended up being about 10 minutes. And for a TED Talk, it's a very specific kind of layout. It's not like a college lecture or like an interview. You have to really condense your life's work sometimes into a very concise speech, and you have to hit certain points and make sure that it's about the idea and not about your narrative, and that it always comes back to what is innovative about what you're spreading as opposed to you talking about you and your story. Like people don't want to hear about what your grandma said when you were 8. They want to hear about how they can apply it in their own life and what the idea we're spreading is. So all of this to say, I had 1 or 2 coaches who helped me with the draft. And then I had several more coaches who helped me with the speaking, like how do you move across stage and what do you do with your arms? If you have several lists, like you can't just do this over and over. So you put things in boxes and you put them up here and you use your hands like this. And like, where does your mic go? And do you hold it? And do you use your clicker? And like, these are things you all think about. And like, even as a performer and as a professional mover who goes on stage like all the time, I'm not thinking about where my clicker hand goes and like if I'm listing things differently and if I walk and then I stop and then I make a point. Like there are all these things that I haven't thought about. And a lot of TEDx events, you know, they'll say, okay, here's the date you're performing, or you could be a performer, but you're speaking and we'll see you then. But TEDx Salt Lake City really does a good job of making it like a professional presentation. And so I was really kind of mentored through the process of how to like use my hands and use my words and the cadence of the way I speak. And where do I pause? And where do I look and pause? And do I like lift my hand for this camera and look to that audience like member that's way in the nosebleeds? And so all of that took 5 months. And then before I went on stage, I was actually crying my eyes out because I was so scared. I know my makeup somehow like made it through. I was like, I was very, again, fortunate to have been selected as the closing the closing speaker of the day, which is like an honor to be able to close. Like for anyone closing a show, they know that's like a nice opportunity. I was very grateful. However, the day does start at 4 a.m. with hair and makeup, or it did for me. And so finish the conference at 5 p.m. was a very long day. And the night before, like my goddaughter had been up at 3 a.m. crying because she's only 8 months old. And, you know, I was already nervous and I just hadn't slept at all. And so I think the nerves really hit by the person before me going on. And like, there was all this stuff of like, you know, I'm very sentimental, and I truthfully had wished that my dad was there. He'd passed away a few years prior, and I was just very emotional and like very sleep deprived. And so I was quite literally bawling my eyes out in the backstage. And one of my coaches was like, you can do this in 20 minutes. Your talk's only 10. Like, get it together and we'll bawl our eyes out in 20 minutes together. Like, just get your shit together, basically. And I was like, that seems super reasonable. And then I got on stage.
Like, suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah, really though. And so I get on stage and I'm very smiley, and I don't think you cannot tell, I think, or people say I can't, that I was like in pieces before that. I actually forgot my lines, and they cut this out of the film, but I just like stare at, and even in the live performance, people in the audience said that they didn't notice. They thought I was just very pensive, which is one of the things I was coached on, is if you forget a line, you like stare at the ground to look like you're collecting your thoughts and are just like really serious and impassioned and like awestruck by like the emotion and sentiment of your narrative. But really I was just trying to think about my line until someone backstage called it out to me. And then I like continue. They cut that pause out in editing, which I'm so grateful for, but it was only about 30 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. So yeah, that's how I felt. I was deeply terrified, and it went by. I don't really remember hardly any of it. It just is like black. But sometimes most of the time for me personally, I get so much stage fright that performance is a blur, and I hopefully am in a state of flow. And that's usually why I don't remember it.
So that's interesting. So like stage fright is still a thing for you after making so much performances. Yes. I have taught thousands of classes and done a handful of like dozens of performances. And yeah, I've seen this in other professional performers that they like need to throw up before they go on stage. And it is interesting. I had one mentor say it's about fear and the power you give the audience to perceive and judge you. And it has a lot more to do with like internal work and how much power you give other people, which like, I don't want to unpack right now, but, but yes, I do still get stage fright. And every time I go on stage, I'm like, I picked the wrong career. And then I do it and it's fine. Usually. Yeah, usually. And teaching, like the nerves have gone away with that. I mean, every now and again, there'll be something big that comes up where I'm like, ooh, people see me. And I see you seeing me. But for some people that goes away quickly. For some people that doesn't exist. And for some, it lingers until the old age. And maybe that's me. I mean, okay, I haven't done like stage performances to that extent, right? Like, you have. And I think TEDx, that video, I couldn't tell that you were crying at all. So
thanks.
I thought it was very well composed, and like you were very, I don't know, you delivered it. Like, I mean, you knocked it out of the ballpark. So that's why I was like, oh my fucking God. Like, I need to know, how was it before, you know? Did you have a glass of wine afterward, you know?
I sure did.
Rightfully so, right? But for me, I mean, because stage wise, because you know, I'm more of like in the film and all that, and so stage, as far as that goes, is more like awards or whatever, you know. But back in high school, I was part of the tech crew for like the theater department, and so I have to go on stage and sneak on stage, and just be behind sets, and it was really cool because I could see them, but they couldn't see me, right? And then after a while, I don't know. I didn't get that nervous anymore because you're just doing your job. But like back in 2019, my short film won like best short film under like 500 at this festival.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
But I had to do a speech after or up there, right? And talk about nerve wracking. Like, I had so much adrenaline. It's the adrenaline that like kills you, right?
I'm sure like you were spending time thinking about like if you won, and then if you know.
Well, it's if, and then there's also talks with the whole crew and cast, being like, well, if it wins, we should all go up, right? And for whatever reason, I stood up and everybody stared at me, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, so it took longer for them to like communicate, via hands in the crowd. And I was just like, no, like at this point, you guys fucked up.
Yeah.
And I didn't prepare anything either. So like I winged that whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, so like for combating stage fright, I would say, and not that you asked, but like the main like players that go into that like you can combat one at a time to like prevent it is like preparation. Yep. But also like sometimes like who wants to do that? But so preparation, and that's not just like words, but like also making sure the like choreography is all down and like everybody's on board and you have the same game plan. Because like I've definitely been in situations like that where I'm like, this just intensifies like how awkward I feel. And like now I'm just more nervous. And then like reducing the like overthinking time prior, because that's like the main component. And then like doing some work on yourself of like, are you okay being seen and seeing people seeing you, which like is always the biggest player for me. I'm like, oh no.
One, like with ballet and the dance performances, I mean, they have stage lights up there, right? Like just shining right down on you. So you can't see really anybody until like you're out of the viewpoint of the lights, right? But
like that's always the goal. Like I've never met any dancers or performers who are like, I want to see the audience see me. Like I like the pain. Usually it's like, oh, it's bright enough, you can't see them, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like, yes, and everyone cheers. But there are sometimes instances where you're in like a moody, dimly lit piece or in a show that doesn't have much of a budget and is like, doesn't have professional lights or is in the daytime or is, in modern dance, site specific work is very much a thing because we like experimental work outdoors in the trees, and you can see people seeing you in the light of day. And it's deeply terrifying, but for that same reason, it also helps you grow as a performer, and it's a good thing. But it's a really disgusting medicine sometimes.
And so when you look back on all of your performances, though, like you always feel kind of gratified, right? Like you're like, this is better than I thought it would be, or do you feel like there was growth to some extent, maybe
98%.
98%.
There's like a couple exceptions where I feel like wouldn't do that again. And that mainly has to do with like the way it was handled and like personal connections. Because when it comes down to it, anything you do is about people and about other people. And if the connection isn't there or isn't right, or like if you get someone who's rude or I don't know, so if things aren't handled well, I think that's the only time I've been like, that could have gone better.
Yeah.
But, like stage mishaps happen all the time. But I feel like if you're working with good, kind people, it's overall a net positive generally. But, I'm not the most experienced person. So maybe that there's someone more experienced than me who can speak to that better.
What's your favorite experimental piece to dance to? Or let me rephrase this. What's the most experimental that you've gone with your dancing? Because you mentioned dancing in the forest. I'm like, that never even like crossed my mind.
Okay. One time in undergrad, I was in a composition where this was not my piece.
Okay.
No shade. I don't know why I felt the need to be like, it wasn't mine. But how do I begin? I had this bag. I was wearing a backpack full of acorns. And so my job was like to shake it around rhythmically as I was walking and jumping and moving in a set way. And it was not just full of acorns, it was also full of legumes and large carrots. And so then my next thing was to sit in the splits, open the backpack, take out each legume, identify it. I don't even know if I'm saying that, legume. I hate that way that word sounds. And then I would take this carrot and then just like break it off and chew it while staring at the audience. So that's my profession. What about yours?
Did you, here's the real question with this, okay? When you're staring at the audience, did you see who could blink first?
See who blinked first?
Yeah.
I was not thinking about that.
You weren't having like a staring contest, like
no, I was
making it more awkward for them.
Laugh. And like I was really like the goal was to take myself really seriously. Right. And so, you know, I could see the other students really trying not to laugh, and they were like, this is art. And I'm like, art. But like, I don't know. That's what I would actually do again. It helped me grow, I think, because when she was like, and then you're going to shake a bag of acorns, I was like, what? I have trained my whole life for this. And then, but I would totally do that again. Because, you know, yeah, there is great dance in Utah and there are things to learn from shaking bags of acorn. And I like could totally like step off my high horse and learn something from doing that.
That's the takeaway from that. That's cool.
Yeah. I don't remember who blinked first, but I remember how it felt. And I remember how I felt. And it wasn't my prime, but I did grow.
I don't know. I'd like to like make the eye contact and just see who stares or blinks first, right? Like, because there's a moment like when you're staring at somebody and then they make eye contact with you. Usually there's like the, you know, glance away or whatever, you know what I mean? But like, there's a couple seconds after it registers, then it just automatically becomes the staring contest, right? Like when it's just an automatic rule.
Oh, didn't cross my mind. It's so true though. I just remember the flinch of like them trying not to laugh and like being like, this is art. And I'm like, like, this is freaking art. Like,
so have you, okay, now let's try to tie like both of our interests into this, right? Have you ever filmed or even worked with like people to film a dance?
Yes.
How'd that go?
I've done it in a handful of different contexts.
Okay.
But so
it's a broad question. So
yeah. I mean, I like film for dance. It's not like so are you referring to screen dance or are you just talking about movement on film in general?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know.
No, it's okay. I'm not like a screen dance buff. Like there are some people who are like really passionate about it. And
what do you mean by screen dance? I guess that should be the question.
Okay. So I'm so glad you asked, because after I finished my TEDx talk, I love that experience so much. I became a speaking coach. But I figure I'm not great with like public speeches or public performance for words. I'm more of a mover and I'm more interconnected with the art scene in Salt Lake. So I oversee performance coaching for like the dancers and the singers and things like that. We had one person apply with a screen dance, which is dance for film. And it is the hybrid art form of cinematography and dancing. And it is its own area of study. In fact, there's a certificate for it at the U. And she applied with that. And I said, you know, this year is virtual, it's 2020. And the only way the committee is going to approve that is if you give a talk about what it is, because most people don't know what screen dance is. And she was like, yeah, but I thought the whole deal was that like I wasn't going to talk. And I was like, yeah, no, I get that. But that's the only way we're going to show this. And she was like, okay, I'll do it. And I was like, yes. And so if you go on TEDx Salt Lake City on YouTube and look up screen dance, you'll find Alicia Ross, who's in this stunning blue velvet dress. And she talks about the definition of screen dance. And So I highly encourage you to go check that out. But the short answer, it is the like hybrid form of cinematography combined with dance, and you can manipulate choreography based on post-production edits, and the way that an audience member perceives a story of choreography based on the way something is edited.
So would screen I feel weird asking this because like I have a film degree and this is cool. This is cool.
I hope I'm equipped to answer your cool film question.
Well, I mean, let me ask you this question. Have you seen Black Swan?
Yeah.
So like, are all those dance sequences in that movie, would that be considered screen dance, or is that just a movie showing dancing?
That's dance for film.
That's just dance for film. Okay.
Yeah.
That's probably the distinction I needed was showing dancing still screen dance, or you know, like.
Yeah, no. It's screen dance is its own thing. It's like, this is a short film for, usually it doesn't have to be short, but like it is made for like, it is choreographed with the intention usually of being on camera. Not always, but sometimes, most of the time. It's so fluid with art, but it's generally it. If you want to look up some good screen dance, I recommend starting with William Forsythe's I think it's called One Line Reproduced, or One Line Reproduced, I think is the name of it. That's a famous one. Look up the one that Beyonce covered and stole from low key and never gave credit for. Rosas on Rosas, I think. Oh goodness, I'm like totally butchering it because I'm not a screen dance person. But I can send those links later. But there's some wonderful work which exists, and wonderful screen dance artists that exist and have visited the U because it's one of the only schools that offers a screen dance certificate. Thanks to Ellen Bromberg, who is like a screen dance researcher.
That's so cool. I had no idea.
Yeah. So I've taken some screen dance seminars from like, they had one artist from Scotland come on residency here, a filmmaker from Argentina, and Silvius. Oh, I need to look up these names. I wasn't prepared for this conversation. And then Katrina McPherson is the one from Scotland. And then Thierry Demey came, who is like one of the OG screen dance filmmakers. And like, that blew my mind. He was like, would you be a volunteer while I film you? And I was like, would I? Like, yes, because you have also filmed some of the most famous dancers on earth and like made some of the best screen dances ever to exist. Like, yes, I may do that, Mr. Demey. Oh my God. So anyway, yeah, I love screen dance. I have made it, and I have edited my own stuff. Technically it's on YouTube. But yeah, I'm an amateur, but I do enjoy it recreationally, and I'm working on a film piece actually right now. I just got a grant approved yesterday to take a choreography I've been working on, and a composition that my roommate made, and so we're commissioning several dancers and making it a screen dance professionally.
Exciting.
Yeah,
I want to watch that when it's finished.
Thank you. I'll
cool.
be blasting it everywhere.
I'd be sad if you didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would life be like if you're an artist who never promoted your own work?
I can affirm what that's like, because I'm like that. I mean, I used to be like that, and I'm trying to become more of an annoying, like, here's all my work freak. Look at my website. Look at my dot.
It's always awkward to self-promote, you know? You're
right. Exactly. You have to, in order to survive, especially if you're a freelancer, like that literally pays your bills. And so you have to be like, look how great I am.
And I realized that too sometime last year. So I had to create a new Facebook profile because I'm pretty sure half my friends unfollowed me due to political outrages from the previous years. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So I'm like, you know what? I'll create a new one and not make that personal opinions at all, and just totally networking.
No, but I get it.
Exclusively networking. And so that's, I have, yeah. So I get no. So yeah. Self-promoting sucks ass, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and depending on what platforms you have, and then the research that goes into that, like, oh, when's the best time to post this to get the most audience? It's just
there's a lot of marketing strategy that goes into it. Like, and I wish I had the background, skill set, patience, and education to better understand it. And like, not that that's not a solvable problem. Like, I could research it more, but that is time that could go into developing your craft or developing yourself to be better at your craft. And ironically, you're just promoting your craft, which is its own set of everything. And you're like looking at SEOs, like, how do I boost my website search, and like Googling how to like do like really weird, like stuff that is just not relevant to doing tondus at the bar.
Yeah. Well, and I created my own website from scratch. I thought I'm very impulsive when I do stuff. So I purchased everything and all this stuff. And then I'm like, oh, this would take like maybe half a day. Right.
And then we laughed.
Yeah. No, I mean, it took me like a good almost 3 weeks just on the weekends, to like full, like 7 to whenever, just working on the site and trying to get it up. And even now I still want to make changes, but it's cool knowing that I can like, go in whenever I want and just make those changes, being like, what's up? But, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of learning, and the learning, like the lessons you take away from all that, even though they're not related exactly to your projects, like
it's all transferable.
It is. It very much is. So there's that. Question for you.
Okay.
What's the lowest self-doubt you've faced while you're trying to be a dancer? I mean, I'm just assuming that you're
I can respect that.
An existential crisis millennial.
Oh goodness. There have been a lot of low points. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah. How do I phrase it? Just what have been some of like the lowest moments that you faced while trying to pursue dancing as a whole? And the follow-up question to this is going to be like, well, how did you overcome that? And, like what, how did you incorporate that into your work too?
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out which direction to go with this, because there's like a couple low points I could start from. Like, which one would you like to hear about?
Door number 2.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, you saw the TED Talk. So that one was about my brain injury and what I had done to kind of recover from that physically. But I think I don't really talk about this much in the talk, because that's not what the idea is about. Right. But you can see I'm like defensive. I'm like, and then in my low point, I definitely, okay. So for anyone who hasn't watched it, or if you, I hit my head pretty hard, and it knocked me out and put me out of commission for about 1.5 years. And I was recovering from all different kinds of symptoms as a result, cognitively, physically, socially, emotionally, neurologically. Like it was pretty extensive and like a pretty comprehensive injury. And it was bad. Like, and you're already hard on yourself for that. Cause I think what you're getting at is the emotional side of things. Like, yeah, you're really hard on yourself, and, you spend 2-3 semesters, 8 hours a day sitting at the side of the classroom, watching your colleagues. I mean, there's a lot to be learned from watching. And I have like shelves of notebooks and notepads of just like everything I wrote, of everything I saw and everything I thought, and like drawings and anatomical sketches of like everything, and like just like movement scribbles, like a full shelf from those 2 years. from class observations for 6 to 8 hours a day. Yeah, like it was depressing, but like what really kind of like turned the knife in was having mentors who I trusted and respected tell me that I should just stop dancing or like take a break and stop trying, when I was really trying so hard to be proactive, because I was like, okay, if I can't physically dance, like what does dance mean to me in a research context, in a teaching context? And I was just like looking for all the other ways that dance informed my life. And like, not that I was looking for a pat on the back or anything, but it was definitely disregarded in some of those conversations where I was encouraged to stop dancing. Because, you know, when I wasn't sitting on the sidelines watching class happen, I was learning about neurology and dance and studying that whole side of things, and like working with patients with neurological diseases so that I could see how I could serve them in a dance context. I was volunteering with Dance for Parkinson's, which teaches dance to participants with Parkinson's disease. I was like taking teaching courses. I was studying Pilates. I was doing a lot of different things that I was capable of doing. I mean, I was confined with my physical restrictions, but I felt like I was really proactive and taking a lot of initiative outside to inform my studies. And so to be told like it still wasn't enough was like kind of a breaking point for me. That kind of discouragement and sort of, it felt like a betrayal of trust. And I think that was because I was just already really hard on myself. And so to kind of have those fears and things that you put on yourself validated, it just like felt really horrible. But also it kind of lit a fire for me to kind of feel like I needed to prove myself. Like I really had something to prove. Like, it's kind of funny when I think about it now, like how badly I just needed to prove that I was like, I'm a dancer and like, I'll show you and like, I'll start this program and like, I'll change lives. And like, like it really like was just a hurting person trying to deal with it. But at the same time, like that process was very therapeutic for me, seeing that other people could have some quality of movement restored, like quite literally restored something in me that I felt like I was lacking somewhere else. And not that everyone needs to go and start ballet classes, but I mean, they could and they should, but like, you know, that was just it for me. And yeah. And then it really took off. I think, you know, if in any project, if you're genuine in your intention and sincere and earnest in your mission. And I would like to think that I was. Of course, there were moments where I was like, this is about me and I need to prove myself. And for those moments, I kind of regret. I'm like, I wish I'd been more earnest, but I didn't even know I was working through anything at the time, or that it was about me until I suddenly was like, it was like a catharsis. And I was like, oh my God, like this was probably a little bit about me. It wasn't until those moments that I realized that I was maybe selfish, but to answer the question, yeah, it took off and people really gravitated to the project, and for that I'm very grateful. And it was picked up by TEDx Salt Lake City, and it was picked up by the United Nations conference committee when they came to Salt Lake, and it was picked up by IADAMS, which is like a dance medicine. Like the Dance Medicine Foundation and Science Research Committee of like the world. And, you know, so I guess it's fair to say I made a comeback, and I proved myself, but, you know, of course, there's always days where I'm like, nobody. And so, yeah, I don't know. You know, it's being an artist is what this is. It's the back and forth.
Yeah. You did make a comeback. I mean, I think having those under your belt is like the biggest middle finger to all those who said you can't do this, you know.
Sure.
I strive for that. No, I strive for that level of confidence. And I mean, that really speaks volumes for like the passion you have for your craft, you know. It's cool.
Thanks.
Stick it to the man, as School of Rock says, you know.
I don't want or need to stick it to anybody, but I mean, like there were moments where I was like, yeah, take that. But you know, like it's about so much more than that.
It is.
But yeah, those moments are extremely vindicating.
But I mean, like you said, though, I mean, look how much you've learned about yourself during the whole process, and
yeah, right. Like I didn't even know I had stuff to work through until I was, I was putting on it was like my second year putting on a Nutcracker performance for the participants in that class. Yeah. And I was like, I freaking love this. And I think it's because I really have a hard time with the holidays. And like, how much of this is really me putting this on is about me healing my relationship with the freaking holidays. And so, like, I'm trying to make their holidays better, but like, I don't know, something I can work out in therapy some other time. But yeah. Yeah. The point is, all artists are selfish.
I mean, you kind of have to be, to find your true self still, if you're always giving to others, but never giving to yourself, then you'll never find yourself in the end,
Of course. And like, how much can you give to others if you're not paying? Like, you can't give to others when you're not paying.
And for as much as you can give to others, right? That means you could still give that amount to yourself. It's all about the balance.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Without friction, there's no growth. But without growth, there's this stillness, right? So,
yeah.
I don't know. I think it's cool. It's cool that you went through all that and came to this realization. And like I said, you got TEDx under your belt. Yeah. The only people I know that has under the belt, 1 now, but 0 before.
No. Yeah. And like, I think maybe that was my starting intention, was like, I need to prove something. But right. Now that I continue that work, it's not about that.
Right.
And I'm very glad that it's not about that. I didn't even know that that's what it was about. I just felt like angsty.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I relate sort of, because there were some stuff that happened with the film stuff at school, right? Mm-hmm. And I was bitter about stuff. Mm-hmm. And after graduation, is when I, went forth and did the short film. And the short film was like 35 minutes long. So like, I think that's a huge length after you graduate. Mm-hmm. But, and then, it got nominated and won a couple stuff at festivals, but that was my like stick it to the man to like that certain film stuff that went on. But now it's all about, reflecting on more like family stuff and just who I am. You know what I mean? Like that's all the projects now, is just what really resonates with your core.
That's truly the only things as artists like that we can genuinely offer, because if we're trying to do anything but what we know and what ourselves, like who we are, like, is it really sincere and genuine, or are we just appropriating or copying something else? I don't know if you've seen Tick, Tick, Boom yet.
I have.
Do you hate it? What was that reaction?
Vice versa. What was your reaction?
I loved it.
You loved it? I'm on the opposite spectrum.
Oh, really?
I appreciated it, but it wasn't my fave. But continue.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's all right. Difference of opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like the reason I bring it up is because that theme gets reintroduced at the end of like his musicals didn't pick up any traction until he started writing about his own life, which is something he's an expert at. And I think there's something to be gained from that. As an artist, like this, just that general sentiment. Like, I feel like I've made my best choreographic work when I'm working through some angst and it's about my angst. And sometimes I don't know why I'm angsty until after the piece is done. And I'm like, that's really combative partner work, Jessica. Like, did somebody hurt you? Yeah, they did. Like, so.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a thing too. And I think that's where like imposter syndrome might come in for creatives, where I would say they get like these gigs and stuff, and then they don't know if they can amount to it because they're like, well, do I know this? Right. But the only way to know is if you try. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't really buy into the whole imposter syndrome, really. If you just wing it and you can still act like you know what you're doing, and then you end up doing what you're doing. Like you're learning as you go.
Yeah. I mean, that is like the only way to grow is to get uncomfortable. So yeah, but yeah, it's the lines are so thin and so blurred, and they regularly change of like maintaining the integrity of who you are and what you do while also expanding into something new and different and uncomfortable that is out of your comfort zone and expertise. But anyway, I could talk your ear off about this all day. I don't want to go way over time. I apologize.
No, you're okay. We could start wrapping this up too. Real quick, I just want to end this with like two questions.
Mhm.
Well, last one's kind of a 3-parter or 2-parter, so it's like technically 3. But how do you hope you can inspire others by moving forward with teaching ballet and doing more research into it?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. My primary goal, I mean, like, my goals change as I change, and I hope that my goals keep changing. But at this particular point in my life, my primary mission as a teaching artist full time, like who specializes in like how do I provide information to movers, is to empower especially young people to take up space unapologetically. I find that I teach like in the field of dance, I end up teaching a lot of younger women, like young adults. And I think as a young woman, it's very hard to take up space and be okay with that and like sit in that. And it's something I grapple with for sure. And I feel like I'm pretty honest and open about that, but I hope that dance can be a mechanism through which to empower that skill, and learn and understand your relationship to yourself and others as far as like being and existing and being okay with being who you are in any space and true to who you are and sincere and genuine and kind. And I know that that's like a big task, but yeah, my hope is as simple and as complex as that.
All right. And to go along with that, what's one piece of advice that has stuck with you throughout the years, and how do you apply that to your craft or your life or both?
There've been a handful. I mean, obviously that are like, these are my mantras. But the one that's most relevant right now, and has been for the last 3 years, is from my professor, Molly Heller at the University of Utah. She would say, be scared and do it anyway, or something to that effect. And she always related it to the context of dance. She does a beautiful job of relating dance work to life work, and like, how does your relationship with this person right now and how much weight you're giving them relate to like how you feel in yourself and how confident you feel about giving someone else your literal weight or your metaphorical weight. And so that's kind of the mantra that I've carried, is be scared and do it anyway. And as with that mantra in the last year, I've free dove with sharks. I've jumped out of planes. I've done a lot of scary crap. And still the scariest thing to me is dancing and being seen while dancing and posting videos of dancing. That's like scarier than all those things. But I'd say that advice has taken me to some cool places.
Do you think it's possible? This is a really tangent, but since you said you jumped out of a plane, would it be possible to like coordinate like a dance, in the air?
The answer
has that been done before? Or
yeah, I mean, like, I don't know about a codified dance, but I've seen like skydivers do sorts like they do sorts of like group things, or they'll hold hands, or I feel like I've seen a video in the air where like of a dance. I mean, you'd have to be a very experienced diver, and you like to the point where you don't have someone attached to you. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, you'd have to be certified as a free diver and like coordinate that with other people. But I think it's been done.
Because like I saw a video of somebody dancing in a pool, like at the very bottom of a pool, and just totally free motioning it, and I thought that was really cool. But it was like 5 minutes long. I can't hold my breath for that long, especially when you're dancing. Like,
definitely
the amount of like energy you're excreting,
Yeah, totally. I have no idea how they do that, but I think it's amazing.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jessica, where can people find you? So they can check out your work or follow you
Yeah,
on social medias.
absolutely. Like I said, I have a website because I promote myself. It's jessicabaynes.com, JESSICABAYNES.com. That has all the links on there. But if you are trying to find me on the gram, it's at Jessica Baynes with an underscore at the end because all the other ones were taken. And I'm also on Facebook. Maybe don't hit me up on Facebook, but you can. And then email jessicabaynesdance@gmail.com. Obviously, the TED Talk exists. Just type in Jessica Baynes TED Talk. I pop up. If you want to learn more about healing in motion dance, definitely look up that TED Talk or go to healingandmotiondance.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
It's fun to get to know the dancing stuff that I don't know about.
Definitely. Let me know if you'd like to catch up again sometime, podcast or not. This was super fun.
Yeah. So, okay, we'll stay in touch. Follow the podcast everywhere, and that's the show.